Hello, everybody. Hey, welcome back to We're Talking Movies. As always, I'm Andrew Duvall, joined by my forever friend, Cade Bonzel. And we're back with another movie review. In this case, we're reviewing one of my all time favorites, Ghostbusters from 1984. Cade, what do you have to say about this movie?
I will say this. I actually do think that this is a great movie. It's not one of my favorites like you, but I do think that it is a very classic and iconic film, and I get why it is. And again, not one of my favorites, but I do like it overall. But why don't you start off with it? What are some of your favorite things about the movie? Because I know that the performances are definitely one of them, right?
Definitely, definitely. And everybody perfectly plays the role that they were perfectly cast for. Bill Murray as the wisecracking Venkman, perfect hick choice. Harold Ramis as the geeky and somewhat straight-laced Egon. Dan Aykroyd Hoyt as Ray. He is the geeky but slightly less straight-laced his character, and then Ernie Hudson as Winston, the perfect, completely straight man for this group. And supporting cast is also really good. Everybody Eddie from Annie Potts to Rick Moranis perfectly captures the roles. And this is just a very well acted comedic movie. And that's actually, something you really don't hear very often.
Oh yeah, I agree because I don't think that I think there are a lot, but not too many where every single performance and actor and character is funny in the movie, and that's something that this movie achieves very well. And yeah, I think a lot of that attributes to the fact that the whole cast, especially the main Ghostbusters, how they all have just such great chemistry together, and it makes the comedy and the movie flow so well.
Absolutely. And I think I can't tell how much of this how many of the jokes are actually written into the script, and some of them feel ad libbed, but the fact that you can't really tell which way or the other, I think, also lends the fact that it's also very well acted with very good chemistry, and it's also a very good script. This is a very tight, very well delivered comedic script too, and like it's got a really good pace. Like it never really drags, and it also does have some genuinely creepy moments too. Like I know everybody associates this movie as being a campy comedy that everybody loves, but there is a couple of genuinely creepy moments, like the opening in the library when the jump scare with the library ghost, when Dana gets attacked by the weird bear dog things, and then gets kidnapped in her own apartment. There's some genuinely creepy moments in this movie too.
Well, and I think back to what you were saying about how it's such a great script. Well, let's not forget it's also written by Dan Aykroyd, and he too is pretty much a comedic genius. And I think as a writer and an actor, he just always lands it very well.
Exactly, and you can definitely tell that you can feel the SNL influence between
Yes,
with both the acting and the writing, because I believe Bill Murray, and he was definitely on there, was I can't remember, was Dan Aykroyd SNL or was he Mad TV, which is basically Canada's version?
I think he was SNL.
Well, either way, there's some very definite SNL, kind of influence in the script, which I think definitely helps because at this point SNL was still very much in its heyday.
Yeah, and I think that, aside from the acting, the characters in this movie are also very memorable as well. And I look back at characters like Peter Venkman, I think he's a good lead character. At first, I did kind of think of him as somewhat of an antihero, but my idea of that has kind of changed. I don't think he's an antihero. I think he is a hero. He's not a completely noble hero, is what I think, because, he has his behavior is somewhat questionable and his commitment is somewhat questionable at times, but he's still, I think, a noble guy, and he is good. He does work as a hero in that sense, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It's he's a hero, but he's got flaws, but he's not as detestable as a straight up anti-hero would be.
Right. And I got to be honest, I would take a hero with flaws over a hero with no flaws at all.
Yeah, because that comes across, at least to me, as very kind of plastic and inorganic.
Yes. And if you don't have flaws, then there's no way for your character or your hero, especially, to grow. And that's what you usually want to see in a movie. But aside from Venkman, I really do love the character of Ray. I think he might be my favorite character in this movie, aside from Dan Aykroyd's performance. I just thought Ray brought so much presence on the screen, and I thought he actually had some of the most like personality.
Yeah, like I said it towards the beginning of the cast, or towards the beginning of the episode, he's very geeky and nerdy and very, ultra sciencey, but not super good with the normal social stuff, kind of like Egon is, but he's much more upfront with it and much more comedic with it, whereas Egon is a bit more of the nerdy straight man.
Yes.
So I think you've got the fact that the combination of the comedic aspect and the geekiness, I think, really lets Ray shine as a character.
Yeah, for sure. And I also do like the character of Janine. I think that she's, I don't know if I'd call her like a main cast member. She felt a little bit more like a supporting character, but either way, I did like her character and I thought Annie Potts was great. And despite the fact that she's really a supporting character or maybe kind of a sidekick character, I thought that she still felt super valuable to the team in that way.
Yeah, because I mean, she's playing the stereotypical, sassy secretary, but she also adds this kind of like flirty nerd aspect to it with, especially with Egon, and I think it creates this, very fun, very memorable supporting character. And like I agree. I don't think she's part of the main team. I think the main five would be, Peter, Ray, Egon, Winston, and Dana. But yeah, but she's still definitely memorable, even though she doesn't have a whole lot of screen time.
No, yeah, I get what you mean. And, I think another thing, like one of the best things about this movie, aside from the acting and the characters, would have to just be the comedy. What's so great about the comedy in this film is that it never feels forced, like into a scene, and it also flows very naturally because I watch a lot of comedies, and I think comedy is actually one of the toughest genres because what you find funny as a filmmaker or as an actor or whatever could be something completely different from what audiences feel. And a lot of times in comedies, jokes just feel like shoehorned in or they just feel like so out of place. But that doesn't seem to be the case with this movie. The comedy always lands in every scene, and it's just because of how well the script is.
Yeah, and like I was mentioning earlier, you can't tell if some of this is ad libbed or if all this is written, and that just shows the strength of the script. Also, the fact that this is one of just the most quotable movies of all time.
Yeah, I will agree with that. Yeah, it probably is.
Let me know when we get to floor 57. I'm going to throw up.
Yeah, for sure. And again, back to the actors, the acting is a big part of what makes the comedy work because Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd and everybody else, Sigourney Weaver, Rick Moranis, Annie Potts, because of their not just their performances, but just who they are, they really bring that type of life and presence to the comedy, and that's what makes it land so much.
Absolutely. Like, would you say this is the best comedic cast of all time?
I think it's definitely one of the best comedic casts. I'm not sure if I'd say the best one, but it probably is, but definitely one of the best because the cast in this movie is actually really, really great.
I agree. I completely agree. There's comedic royalty all up and down this movie, and even there's some actors who aren't really known for known primarily for comedies, like Sigourney Weaver, for example. She still perfectly fits into the role too.
Yes, absolutely. And aside from that, I think one of the best things about the movie would have to be the production and costume design. I think when it comes to both production and costume, this movie is so iconic and classic, and it just feels so it's hard to explain, but it just really works so well. I mean, the sets for this movie are so great. They look so much fun to be around that you kind of just wish you could jump into the movie and be with the Ghostbusters as they were interacting on the set. Also, the costumes and the props that they got to use. It's just like, wow, this this is just such a fun movie to watch and just be immersed with in that sense.
Absolutely. And and this is something that I really like. All of the iconic props, such as the backpacks X or the Ecto One, everything feels homemade. And what
Yeah,
I
it
mean
does.
by that is nothing feels overly productive or this was clearly made to be a prop in a movie. Everything feels like it was actually made in this world by these people. And I know that's a weird thing to point out, but that really is how it feels like. Speaking of production and costume design, I got to talk about the fact that this movie came out in 1984, but the special effects still hold up really well.
Yeah, they do hold up really well.
Like when they're shooting the proton packs, the lasers still look really good. A lot of the ghost effects still look really good. A lot of the animatronics still look really good. Like a lot of movies don't have, or from this time period, don't have effects that age super well.
Right. Yeah.
Honestly, there's movies from the 90s that haven't aged really well. And that was, 10 plus years, here's of effects advancement later. This movie still has really good effects.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think makes it a lot more because the Ghostbusters as a film is something really just special that so many people care about, and I think that's one of the main reasons why is just because of how much it holds up almost 40 years later.
Holy cow, yeah, we're at the 40-year anniversary next year.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, it's another thing that I actually do like about this movie. I don't know if you'd agree, but I actually do like the sort of, I mean, it's not a, I wouldn't say it's a super campy film, but I do like the somewhat campiness that it has because I think that this movie actually does campiness a lot better than so many other films. How do you think it achieves that?
A good question. I think the fact that, again, the fact, how do I want to put this? Because I do agree, but I think it's probably the fact that you can tell everybody was enjoying themselves making this movie.
Right.
And if there's a, I tend to notice if there's more of a laid back atmosphere with making or in a filmmaking process, and if the if the cast talks about that later on in a documentary or a behind the scenes feature, it does seem to make a better movie. And I think that also relaxed atmosphere does help with the campiness. Or I think another aspect is just this was a very different time in America, mid 80s. Yeah, there were still problems in the world, but they weren't as in your face as they are in 2023 all of the time.
Right. Yeah. And I get what you mean though about that. And I think that is why the campiness works so well. But yeah, aside from that, do you have any other pros you want to talk about with this movie?
Um, no, not really. My big thing I wanted to bring up was the special effects, which I did, and again, very, very well done. And
Of course.
just kind of looking at this movie and its contemporaries like Caddyshack or Heck or the Blues Brothers. Damn, the early to mid 80s was a great time for comedies.
Yeah, it was for sure. And that's definitely one of the best things about it. And but yeah, why don't we get into our cons with this movie? So do you have any big cons or minor cons with this film at all?
Uh, Walter Peck, the kind of ultra environmentalist, corporate d-bag character, I think could be a bit much. And the fact that the entire third act of the movie is based on his stupidity.
Well, and I think that, well, it's nothing against William Atherton, his actor. I think he played the role pretty well. And honestly, he kind of reminded me of his character from Die Hard, the reporter character.
There's definitely something to that, yeah.
Yeah, but his performance was still fine. But for me, in terms of the cons, my least favorite thing about this movie was honestly the romance storyline between Peter and Dana. It's not, it wasn't done badly. It's just I wish it could have felt more important to the story, if that makes any sense. I just their romance I didn't really buy too much because I think it wasn't fleshed out enough, and it just felt a little kind of shoehorned in. So it probably was my least favorite part. Other than that, I don't have any big complaints. I don't know if you feel the same way at all.
I don't. I thought it was a natural part of the move. Felt pretty natural. The ultra sarcastic but still trying to be charming Venkman, and the attract lady that he's clearly attractive to. I think it feels like a natural progression for a comedy from this time period.
I just wasn't a huge fan of it. Maybe if I keep watching it again, I'll probably have a different opinion. But other than that, the only other con I have with this movie would have to do with the villain of the film. Now, the villain is not done poorly by any means. It's just, I don't think the villain is as explored as it could have been, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think there's something to that because Gozer in person doesn't show up until what is it, the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Right.
But I think the fact that they kind of, yeah, it wasn't Gozer themselves, but the fact that they, talked about him and teased him and, had the, his minions helping him, I think kind of adds to it a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
Also, the fact that it gave us the immortal line of "It's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man."
Yes. Yep. That was great. I will admit that. Yeah. That part of the movie was good. But yeah, those are really all my cons. Other than that, I still think that this movie's great and it is classic, obviously. But tell you what, for a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this film?
Ooh, oh, do I want to give it a 10? I've given a lot of tens recently.
Yeah, you have.
Oh, do I want to? This is just because I've given so many tens recently. I'm going to give this one a 9.75.
Okay. All right.
Just because I've given way too many tens recently. So, but this is definitely worthy of a 10. I just don't want to be accused of fanboying too much.
No, no, I get it. I think I would give this movie an 8.5, probably, because it is a great film, no denying that. But I still just have those little issues that keep it from being a 10. But other than that, no, great movie, and 8.5 is my rating, of course. And yeah, I think that's all we have to say. Anything else you want to talk about with this movie before we finish?
I mean, I like Ghostbusters 2. I didn't see Ghostbusters 2016 just because I was not a huge fan of the writing I saw from the trailers. So I didn't feel like, if I'm not interested in a movie, I'm not going to go see it just for the sake of seeing it. And I liked Ghostbusters Afterlife. That's about all I can say. I don't know if we're ever going to cover those in future reviews, but there's my abridged version on the rest of the series.
Yeah, we'll probably have to. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening. We got more reviews to come. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you later. Thanks. Bye.